February 24, 2005, a peaceful Thursday afternoon covered the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. The bare trees still had a touch of early spring frost. On the familiar Wilson Mill Street, cars drove slowly, soft music playing from the car's cabin on the radio. Inside a spacious house, 38-year-old Rosemary Essa, affectionately called Rosie by her friends, was rushing to finish her chores so she could watch a movie with her sister. Her brown hair tied back, car keys in hand, she turned back to kiss her two young children goodbye before heading out the door. Everything was normal. Too normal, even. No one knew this would be the last time they saw Rosie alive. Just 30 minutes later, on the same quiet road, a gray Volvo SUV suddenly swerved, crossed into the opposite lane, and lightly hit the back of another car. There was no loud bang. There was no gore. But there was one detail that made things unusual. The driver, a woman, was vomiting uncontrollably in a state of panic, her eyes wide and lifeless, her body almost giving out. The first person to approach the car was a doctor on her way to work. She immediately realized that this was not simply the result of a minor collision. The woman inside, later identified as Rosie Essa, showed no signs of external trauma, but was in severe respiratory distress, vomiting a strange-smelling liquid and losing consciousness. 911 was called, an ambulance arrived within minutes and Rosie was rushed to Hillcrest Hospital. The doctors on duty immediately realized that her condition could not be explained by the usual causes: no stroke, no serious accident, no obvious signs of head trauma or poisoning. There was only an irregular heartbeat, rapid breathing, and a blank look in her eyes. Although the doctors tried to resuscitate her, intubated her, injected her with adrenaline and other heart stimulants, Rosie still did not survive. She died just an hour after being admitted to the hospital. Soon after, the bad news spread throughout the family. Her husband, Dr. Yazid Essa, arrived with an incomprehensible calm. He did not burst into tears, did not question her, did not get angry, simply said, "She just left the house not long ago. I don't understand what happened." It was this indifference that made Rosie's relatives, especially her best friend Eva McGregor, begin to feel uneasy. Just a few minutes before the accident, Rosie called Eva on the phone and said, "I feel so tired. Terrible. I think the calcium pills Yaz gave me made me nauseous." Rosemary Essa, 38, wife of a prominent Cleveland doctor and mother of two young children, died suddenly in a minor traffic accident. But what seemed like an unexpected medical incident quickly revealed a cold and evil plot behind the curtain of a perfect marriage. When forensic results showed that Rosie's blood contained 3 times the lethal level of cyanide, all eyes turned to her exemplary husband, Dr. Yazid Essa, but that was just the beginning. When the police came to the house to take the bottle of calcium pills as evidence, Yazid disappeared from the United States just hours later. An international manhunt begins. With shocking revelations about a man who lived a two-faced life as a playboy in the Middle East and left behind a corpse, 2 orphans, and a devastated family, how could a healthy, happy woman, mother of 2, die suddenly from a calcium pill? How could a doctor, who vowed to do no harm, become a suspect in his own wife's death? Some crimes don't start with blood. They start with a gentle kiss goodbye. Join us as we retrace every trace, every pill, every lie, to uncover the truth behind the strangest death Ohio has ever seen. Rosie Essa, full name Rosemary Depiero Essa, is the epitome of a modern woman, gentle, intelligent, and devoted. Born in 1966, she grew up in an Italian family in Ohio, where family values and ethics were always put first. From a young age, Rosie stood out thanks to her gentle smile and hardworking, polite personality. After graduating, she quickly found a job at Mount Sinai Hospital where she met Yazid Essa, a young doctor of Palestinian origin. Yazid was handsome, humorous, and extremely attractive. Soon, they fell in love and got married on September 11, 1999. They have 2 children, Armin born in 2000 and Lena in 2002. Everyone thought this was an ideal family, a successful doctor, a beautiful wife, 2 well-behaved children, a beautiful house in the suburbs. Rosie was also admired by her friends for always maintaining her gentleness, even when taking care of young children, working part-time and managing a busy household, but behind that smile was a lonely woman. Yazid, her husband, was often away from home, citing work as an excuse. She began to feel alone in the home she had built. A small but important detail: Rosie had told her best friend Eva that she didn't feel as loved as before. What made Rosie's death even more heartbreaking was that she was planning to have another child. In her imagination, she still saw the image of a family of 5 going on a picnic together, laughter ringing out among the trees. But it was all suffocated by a pill. At first, no one thought it was a murder. Rosie died in a minor accident. There was no hard impact, no blood, no murder weapon. But the strange feeling began when relatives noticed the way Yazid behaved: too calm, too cold. The text messages sent to friends the day after his wife's death gave everyone goosebumps. Rosie passed away yesterday in a minor car accident. She will be missed. Not a word of grief, not a tear, not even a question about the cause of death. The police were initially unsuspecting. But Eva's story, Rosie's best friend, changed everything. She confirmed, "Rosie called me before the accident. She said Yas had just given her a calcium tablet and felt dizzy and nauseous right after." From here, all attention began to revolve around that calcium bottle. During the investigation, the police also discovered another shocking detail: Yazid had hired 2 babysitters, one for the day, one for the night, even though Rosie only worked part-time. Both of these people were Yazid's lovers. Yazid complained to his brother that he wanted a divorce but didn't want to pay and lose custody of the child. So if Rosie accidentally died in an accident, could he keep everything? In addition to Yaz, there were other suspects: a random stranger who poisoned her? No evidence. A jealous lover of Yaz? No one had access to the vial except Yaz. Suicide? But Rosie had just planned to have a baby. No signs of depression. All the lines led back to her doctor husband. Rosie was found in a car, no hard knocks, but the driver's seat was covered in vomit and the steering wheel was dirty. Strange, no blood, no trauma, but extremely critical condition. The police who arrived at the scene found nothing unusual about the traffic. But the car was parked off to the side, the windows slightly down, and the woman's eyes were open, as if she was trying to see something. The car examination revealed no mechanical faults or brake failure. However, after Rosie was taken to the emergency room, the doctor on duty immediately ordered a toxicology test because of the unusual heart reaction. A sample of vomit was taken from the car and sent for examination, which, later, became the key to exposing the culprit. On February 25, 2005, Rosie was examined by a forensic pathologist. The result: no trauma. Suspected poisoning. But what poison? At this point, the police asked Yazid's permission to take the calcium pill from his home for analysis. Yaz agreed without hesitation. When they arrived at the house, they discovered that Yaz had hired 2 nannies, Margarita and Michelle, who were rumored to be his lovers. Even more strangely, Yaz did not appear worried. The pill bottle was sent to the lab. The result: 9 calcium pills had been opened, mixed with an unidentified white powder. Further analysis revealed the substance, cyanide. It is a powerful poison, capable of causing death within minutes if ingested in sufficient quantities. But cyanide does not show up in a routine blood test, unless you were looking for it. With this discovery, the police immediately sought a warrant for a more thorough autopsy. The results showed 9.1 milligrams of cyanide per liter of blood, 3 times the lethal threshold. The problem was, Yazid knew this. As a doctor, he understood which substances could not be detected without proper testing. And he chose the right method of poisoning. And then staged the crime scene to look like an accident. The police were ready to arrest Yazid on March 19, 2005. But when they arrived at his home, he was gone. He left a note saying he was helping a friend in North Carolina who had an accident. A few days later, the family realized that no one had been in an accident. Yazid had run away. After fleeing, Yazid traveled through Detroit, crossed the bridge to Canada, and from Toronto flew to Cyprus, then to Beirut, Lebanon, which has no extradition treaty with the U.S. There, he changed his name to Maurice Kiff, changed his appearance, hooked up with a local teacher, and even created an email address called fugitive@hotmail.com. Yazid lived like a real playboy. He went to nightclubs, boasted about being a killer who got away with it. But the FBI was still secretly monitoring him. In October 2006, when Yazid left Lebanon for Cyprus, the FBI notified local authorities. At the airport, he was detained, and his identity was revealed through fingerprints. The problem: Cyprus would not extradite criminals if the U.S. could impose the death penalty. After 3 years of legal negotiations, it was not until January 2009 that Yazid was extradited to the U.S., with a commitment not to impose the death penalty. The trial took place in January 2010. Yazid's attorney argued that there was no direct evidence. But the key witness, Yazid's younger brother, took the stand. I asked, "Did you kill your wife?" He said, "Yes. I put cyanide in the calcium pill." With just one sentence, all the defenses collapsed. On March 9, 2010, the jury found Yazid Essa guilty of first-degree murder, the maximum penalty. The sentence: life in prison without parole for 20 years. On March 9, 2010, after 5 years on the run, hundreds of days of manhunt, thousands of hours of investigation and 3 weeks of intense trial, the Cleveland courtroom held its breath waiting for the final verdict. In the dock, Dr. Yazid Essa, once the pride of the family, the pillar of a small family, was now just a prisoner with his head bowed, silently. It took the jury less than a day to reach its verdict. We find the defendant Yazid Essa guilty of first-degree murder, premeditated, and premeditated. When the verdict was announced, the courtroom was deathly silent. No applause. No boos. Only the sobs of Rosie's parents, and the red eyes of those who loved her. The defense attorney stood silently. There was no defense for someone who had lied to everyone for years. The court sentenced Yazid Essa to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years, the maximum sentence possible under the non-death sentence conditions of the extradition agreement. In her final words to the court, Yazid said only, "I'm sorry. It went too far." But the apology came too late. And no one believed her remorse anymore. Justice may have been served, but the pain remains, lingering like cuts that never heal. Rosie's 2 children, Armin and Lena, lost their mother in kindergarten. Worse, they lost their father in an unimaginable way. He poisoned their mother with the medical knowledge he had sworn to use to save lives. They were raised by their maternal grandparents, the De Pieros, who, while grieving the loss of their children, tried to shield their grandchildren from the shadow of crime. The house that once echoed with Rosie's laughter is now empty and cold. Family photos have been removed from the walls. The cabinet door where the calcium bottle was kept, now physical evidence, is no longer opened by anyone. Neighbors avoid mentioning Essa's name. Rosie's friends, who once believed in her love, live with a lingering question: why didn't anyone notice anything unusual sooner? At the hospital where Rosie used to work, a small altar is placed near the entrance. Her photo, smiling brightly in a white blouse, seems to still be there, watching every patient, every nurse who passes by. The Yazid Essa case is more than just a murder. It is a wake-up call about the dark corners of marriage. Where emotions are stifled, toxic relationships are hidden under a veneer of happiness. Rosie had her doubts. She told her friends that she felt unwell after taking the medicine. But she didn't expect that the tonic would be a death sentence wrapped in white plastic. Yaz was a doctor. He understood the cardiovascular system, he understood toxicology, he understood how to kill without leaving a trace. And he chose his wife, the woman who bore him 2 children, as the subject of his cruel experiment. No one heard Rosie scream. There was no blood, no knife, no gunshot. Just a gentle death, and too easy to ignore. This tragedy is not an isolated one. Across the United States, hundreds of marital murders occur each year, many never caught, because the killer is so familiar, so normal. We often ask, why kill for love? But the real question should be, why do so many people endure dangerous marriages, and no one speaks up? Rosie's death was not an accident. She died because she trusted, and loved, the wrong person. People often say, death is the end. But in this case, Rosie's death was just the beginning of a series of horrifying truths being revealed. If only one person had asked, why was she tired after taking calcium? If only one person had doubted the overly calm text message from Yaz, if only one person had spoken up sooner.